we didn't grow up, and I know I didn't grow up, where in the morning I would run by, let's say I run by a coffee shop and get a coffee in a disposable cup, and then at break, mid-morning break, somebody makes a donut run and they come in with stuff, and then at lunch, maybe you go out to lunch and you grab fast food or you grab takeout from wherever. All of this is just generating so much waste. If we don't change our food service system so that we're using compostable products that are truly then going into an industrial compost system, so that we're capturing things and putting them back into the earth. So I think we have to start somewhere.
Maxie B's been open, and have you always been at this location?
We have been here. This location opened in January of 1988, and it was our second location. We actually opened the first store over on the Guilford College side of town in August of 1985. And then we opened as I Can't Believe It's Yogurt, which was a frozen yogurt store, and then we morphed into a bakery a bit by accident.
What were your tipping points to start making sustainable business decisions?
I have always been conscious of some things and completely clueless about others, but once you learn something, there's a saying that you can't unlearn it. And I think that the more I became aware of consequences of purchasing decisions or actions that we took or whatever, it didn't set well with me. Like we used to use styrofoam cups back in the day in the frozen yogurt business. There's no telling how many thousands and thousands and thousands of styrofoam cups that we sent into the landfill. And I'll never lose that out of me, knowing that we did that. But it was the 1980s, and that's what everybody did, and we didn't have the level of awareness then that I certainly have now. And I feel like that's a good thing. You know, once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. So it's just a matter of learning more and more and more. So I think that one of the tipping points for me was when we visited as a family Carolina Tiger Rescue and learned about different things that we could do to help the plight of tigers in the wild, why they're here in the country, in this country, just many different aspects about that. But one of the things that was something that I knew I could make a change, and maybe in a bigger way than some other people could, since I have a bakery, was the fact that palm oil is destroying habitat for tigers in so many countries, and also just destroyed just the deforestation and the environmental impact, the negative environmental impact that the production of palm oil has. And it's a relatively recent ingredient that has just skyrocketed in production for many reasons. So when I came back to the bakery, it just kept resonating with me that I need to see what do we use that has palm oil. Like I almost couldn't wait to get back here and go through ingredients. And so it wasn't a lot because we do bake from scratch. If you're baking with flour and butter and sugar and eggs, those are not things that you need to look at. But if you're using anything that is a processed food, for instance, Nilla wafers, we use those in our banana pudding. And so I then headed out on the internet here locally to try to find Nilla wafers that didn't have palm oil in them. And we found a cookie that was made in Canada, and we switched over to that, and that was easy. It was an organic vanilla wafer. And we made that change, and so that was good. And there were several other ingredients like that, graham crackers that we used in like cheesecake crust, or what else? We did have Thin Mint Girl Scout cookies, and of course we can't source a different Girl Scout cookie, and so we made the decision that that menu item would come off. We would no longer make Thin Mint cake because we couldn't buy Thin Mint Girl Scout cookies that didn't have palm oil in them. And that was kind of a talking point for us when customers would say, well, when isn't the mint cake coming in this month? And we're like, well, not this year. And then we would, explain why. And so we went through literally every ingredient that we had and just looked at that. And it was the beginning of really looking at our menu very hard. I think just to also look at the quality of the ingredients and what could we buy more locally, to reduce our footprint here and increase the quality and support local. So that one decision of looking at the menu from the palm oil perspective opened the door to look at our ingredients overall, I think, and it was a turning point for us.
And how much training has involved the staff and how long to move through all these different sustainable business options?
Well, I think that's an ongoing process. We have new staff that come in, and I'm definitely the most passionate about it, and so it resonates so deeply within me. And then I kind of assume that it does with everybody else, and that's not really the case. You have to educate, and I think I wasn't always clued in on it either. So I don't judge someone because they're not passionate about it. I just think it's a lack of education or focus on it. So I think that's something that we can definitely work on doing more of, to make sure that new employees that come in get to typically what I like to do is bring a small group in this room and we sit down and we have a sustainability discussion about the things that we do here as a business that are maybe different from other businesses and why it matters. And I usually get pretty choked up at some point in it and begin to cry. We'll get up and shake it off and do something different. We'll maybe go do a trash audit, or we'll go out front and do a garden tour, and then we have a Q&A and we ask for any suggestions from anybody and any questions and whatnot. So it's usually a really wonderful meeting. It's different from our typical operations meeting or marketing meeting or whatever. And one of my favorite ways to connect with our team. I think that is my deepest connection to them, is letting them understand what really drives the reason why we do what we do and how it does make a difference.
And what were the first initial small steps? You mentioned the food, but as far as like switching over to the cleaning products and the composting, how did you start the relationship with gallons?
So one of the things that we wanted to do was just to reduce our waste in general. And honestly, through having attended some workshops at the library that Lane Roberts led about just reducing your waste and different ideas for that. I don't know the timing of that, how much we were already doing here and how much that just cemented my commitment to working on reducing waste in many forms. So we got one of the things we did was we contracted a private recycling dumpster. As a business, I don't know if there are any retail shopping centers that just provide commercial recycling. So we had to work out a space within the shopping center, remove a general waste dumpster that was not being filled, and replace it with a private one with a lock that we could use. And then set up what are the items here in the shop that we recycle, that can be recycled. And we try to stay up to date with that through the Greensboro Collects app or through emailing city staff with questions. So we have a color-coded chart of all of our ingredients, all of the items that we buy, and we see go through the waste stream, and it tells whether they're recyclable, compostable, TerraCycle, which is something we'll talk about, hazardous waste, or could be donated to reconsidered goods. I don't know if I'm missing a category or not, but we have a color-coded chart for that, which is really helpful for everybody to review. But it's not like sitting down and having a show and tell of this is this item and this is where it goes and this is why. So that's a lot more fun and I think more meaningful.
And how did you methodically go through all the steps of your business? Did you do your research first and then you went through the business steps, or how did you go about it? You were trying to inform a business owner who's trying to modify their business operation.
I think I have approached this in many different ways and different steps, depending on, obviously as a small business owner, you're busy and you sometimes you come in and you think you're going to work on this today, but then you've got a few fires to put out and somebody needs this and whatever, your day falls apart and you don't get to work on it. So you move it to the next day. maybe the next day you really can get even more done because you're frustrated that you didn't get to do it the day before. I'm not really good sometimes with the plan. Sometimes it just has to be, I find that I work on things more when I'm in the mood to work on them. So I might have a day where going through all the ingredients is what I want to do and then transferring that into communication with staff. Or I might have a day where I really want to do a lot of research about ways to recycle an item, or what happens to an item in the waste stream, just kind of down the path, nothing that's really in here, but more external. And I just find it more meaningful to me to do that when the idea comes across and I can actually do it. So I didn't have necessarily a plan, but it was just continuing to expand ways that we could reduce our waste. So one of the things was composting. So at first, I grew up in the country, the end of a dirt road in Kernersville, and my mom always had a compost pile, and she would just take any kitchen scraps and throw them out in the corner of the woods, and if the animals ate it, fine. If they didn't eat it and it turned into compost, fine. Anything went, in the country. So we began by working with Summerfield Farms and asking them if they would consider taking some of our compost, because what we had was a larger scale than I wanted to take to my place in Kernersville. So we began by collecting strawberry caps. They wanted to make sure anything that we gave them was organic. So strawberry caps, apple peels, any carrot waste, eggshells, coffee grounds, and all of those were fine. What they didn't want was floral waste. So at the time, we were buying our florals in the shop from just a commercial floral wholesaler. And we knew that those plants had probably been sprayed. So those could not go in with what we were sending to Summerfield Farms. But we would collect it all in these big Cambros and stack them up. And then we had volunteer staff that would load them in the back of our van. And we had boots that we'd ordered for people to wear. And we would go driving all that compost over to Summerfield Farms, schlep it over into this big bin that they had. But then we began to provide more compost to them than they could process. So they would pause it for a while, and then it would go back to we were going to have to put it in the regular dumpster. And it's one of those things that once that waste is not going into the landfill part, and then you don't have a way to divert it and send it to be compost, it just feels awful to everybody. No one could tolerate the idea of it going into the landfill anymore. So I was like, well, I'll take it to my place in Kernersville. So I would drive it to Kernersville twice a week, and it just got to be, it was just such a chore. We were laughing about it the other day. We were like, can you imagine if we still had to do that? But not only that, we really wanted to have an industrial composter where we could include paper products as well. Or like what customers would get coming through the cafe, their sugarcane plate, their compostable fork, their compostable cups. All of that could go in the compost if we had access to an industrial composter. And I received a wonderful email one day from Lane Roberts telling me that Gallon's Family Farm was servicing a few accounts in Greensboro, or in the Greensboro area, Elon, University, Volvo, a few others, and that I should reach out to them. And so I immediately did, and Pete and Lindsay Gallons came over for a tour. We had a great meeting, and we started that very week. And it has really been phenomenal for us to be able to send so much more out of here that will go back into the earth and turn into wonderful compost and be used again instead of going into the landfill. So that is one of the best things that we do here, and I would love to see that be available to other businesses and more consumers too, and just an easy way to make it happen. It just needs to be much more top of mind and readily available, and it needs to be how we all operate. Food going into the landfill does not need to happen.
Great. So how do you think businesses can justify any additional cost to go sustainable to like their boards or the corporations or their investors or their customers if they're trying to convince someone?
Well, for one thing, it's just the ethical thing to do. I think that we have a responsibility to start living a little differently, a little lighter on this planet than what we have been. I think that the human race has been extremely extractive of this planet for too long. And I think that the wake up time is here, and it just, if it means that it's not legal to do it, and that's how we have to go about it, then I think that policy needs to change. You know, I think there are certain communities that have already dealt with that in a legislative regulated way, and certainly that works. It's probably the way that it will have to happen in order for everyone to do it. But in the meantime, I think to be a leader in environmental change feels good. I think it's rewarding for employees to be part of that, because I could see they were right there with me, like, this cannot go into the landfill. We cannot send this bucket of wonderful scraps to the landfill. It's wrong. You know, so what are we going to do? And so if you can bring people along with you like that and spread the word and spread the passion and get that commitment, you know, that feels good. And that's what we need to be doing. So yes, it's an additional cost. I think there probably will be some tax incentives that will come out. So I know our CPA is having us track sustainability efforts as a separate line item now. They have a whole separate category for it. Number one, so that we know what we're spending on it. But number two, I think there will be some deductibility that we haven't seen before as part of these new packages coming along. They anticipate that, and I do too. You know, and it does, some of those efforts cost more, but like the private recycling, having that, you know, because we pay for that. But the truth is, we pay for everything anyway. You pay for your trash to go and be processed at the landfill. Our taxes pay for our recycling dollars at home. And so we would be paying for these items to go into the landfill or into recycling if they could. And so sending them to a composter is just paying somebody differently. And it's a small family farm. You know, it benefits this family. We've toured it. We've been as a company. We've all been out to see it and go out to lunch and then come back here and talk about what we've seen. And so we know what's happening to it. It's not this elusive thing of just kind of, it's more concrete, I think, when you can actually go and see and feel and touch what's going on. And that's one of the greatest field trips we've done. And we want to repeat that again this year. COVID got in the way of some field trips that we used to do. It's just hard to make that happen. They're a good 40 minutes away from here. We couldn't all ride in the same car, and it didn't make sense for us to all drive. So some things stopped, but we were eager to get back to some of that. But I think that just the positive feeling like you're part of the solution instead of part of the problem, that's how I want to live my life. And I think it's important as a business owner and, you know, just as an individual to try to do what you can.
Was it deliberate to create the wildlife habitat in front of your business versus behind your business?
Actually, we have permission to do it behind as well, but we've just been pretty focused out here. We have some great areas in the back that we'd like to add to, but certainly I think putting a lot of interesting things on the patio for people, the fact that we're still curbside and we want to make that pleasant and interesting and make it the best experience that it can be. We already had a bit of landscaping out front, and we have removed some non-native, non-helpful, or plants that were not providing any ecological services. We just took those out, replaced them with natives a couple of years ago with the help of Christina Larson over at Guilford Garden Center. And we really enjoyed what that one little bed, which is right here, turned into. There's a Virginia creeper vine that was actually planted by the birds, or I assume it was birds that planted it, that tends to grow up and all the way across, and we love that. It dies back every year and it comes back. So we started with that bed, and then this past spring we added the raised garden beds out front and added a mix of native plants and herbs and vegetables that has just been so alive with pollinators and just a talking point. Customers enjoy it, our staff enjoys it, and it's really rewarding to watch what happens out there with that.
And it's a certified wildlife habitat.
It's a certified wildlife habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. So we have a sign out there. There are other groups that will certify habitats as well. The North Carolina Native Plant Society will do it. Audubon will do it. Xerces will do it for different. So there's different options, but I think any of those. And when I first thought about putting the sign out, in a way I kind of thought, maybe that's a little pretentious. Maybe you don't want to do that. You just want to do the garden, but don't put the sign out there. And I realized that the first time I saw one of those habitat signs, it was in Charlotte, in Matthews actually, on a farm. And it made me so happy to know that that was their set of ethics and that they cared about that on this farm. It just brought me such joy, and it led me down a path of wanting to know more about it. And I thought, well, why would I deprive that of somebody else? Because it's just an educational thing. It's a talking point, and I feel like people have really enjoyed learning about that, because for years I didn't know that there was such a thing as a certified wildlife habitat or what it takes to create one. And so I decided that we did want to advertise it and share that with people and have that conversation.
Has becoming more sustainable helped you retain employees, recruit employees, and involve employees in the business more?
Oh, definitely. I think that we have people that apply to work here because they like what we do. And we haven't been the greatest about telling what we do, so I think there's been some word of mouth from somebody that they knew that worked here or whatever. But it's very interesting. I see someone coming to work right now with an empty bin where she took her apple peels to go home and feed the deer. She's got deer where she lives, and so I see her coming in with that. It just makes me happy when I see that. I see people come in with their personal recycling, their personal compost, they're feeding wildlife with scraps from here. And I love that. And I love that we just have that special little bond outside of what we do as a bakery. I think that we all need a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. We don't have as much of a sense of place, with people being transient, moving around for school or jobs, or their families moved all over. And I think a sense of place and a sense of identity and a sense of belonging and purpose is what our society really needs right now. And I think that this is a way that they all can get involved and feel better about things.
And you were thinking about a customer sustainability program and incentivizing that. Can you tell about what your ideas are?
Yes, our staff is very involved in what we do here. It's a very much a team effort, and a lot of the team has great ideas on a nearly daily basis. And one of our team had the idea of, prior to COVID, we were just about to go bag free. My thinking is, we as humans have the ability to carry a bag into a shop when we know we're going in to buy something. And the fact that we don't do it is just because we're not in the habit of doing it. So if you get in the habit of taking your bags to the grocery store, why couldn't you get in the habit of taking your bags to a bakery when you come to shop? We go through thousands and thousands and thousands of bags every year. And so this was one of my things that I wanted to do. And the staff is a little nervous about it because they don't want to have that confrontation with customers, or, how can we mitigate that? What's our plan? Hours of conversation go into a decision to do something like that. Well, then COVID happened, and of course, even just one cake slice had to go into a bag and roll it up and hand it to them, from arm's length. So that changed everything. But as we're coming, hopefully, out of the pandemic and with what we've learned from it, we want to reinstate some of the green practices that we had before, because we've definitely not been able to do what we were doing prior to the pandemic. And food service as a whole is just generating so much more waste. So that doesn't feel very good, and we want to try to get back to where we were. So one of our team had the idea of, well, instead of penalizing customers by charging 25 cents if they take a bag, like New York City is doing, what if we reward them somehow? People always want to see us have a punch card again. We used to have punch cards back in the frozen yogurt day, and we don't do that as a bakery. So she came up with the idea of a Planet Lovers discount card. And we are working on finalizing and fine-tuning that, but I hope that we will have that ready to roll out very early in the new year. If not by the time this video goes live, but it will be kind of a reward system where customers will get rewarded for adopting new environmentally friendly behaviors when they're shopping at a place like a bakery with us. And I'm hopeful that if we can have that be a successful program here, it's something that other businesses can launch as well. And moreover, that if customers learn to behave that way here when they're shopping, that they will carry that to other places that they go as well. It's not just when they go to Maxie B's, it's when they go wherever they go.
Do you think the cost of packaging are going to move the food industry and other businesses to more sustainable choices in the future?
The cost of packaging in the last year has really significantly gone up. And I don't know that I see that coming back down. And I think that consumers are fairly unaware of that. It's certainly something that any business owner is looking at and facing. I almost feel like packaging has gone up more than food has. In our experience, it has, but maybe it's what we're using. We really try to buy products that are made in the USA, that are either recycled already, or can be recycled, or can be reused, or can be composted. So the level of what we're buying at is on the upper tier of costs anyway, and they just continue to go up. And I guess supply chain efforts, the supply chain issues are impacting that, but it definitely makes me really interested in trying to communicate to consumers, to our customers, about if you're buying cake slices here and you're taking them home, you don't need a fork and napkin. You're going home. You should have flatware, and I mean flatware, not plasticware. You should have flatware at home, and would love it if you had to bring a napkin, or a cotton napkin that you can wash and reuse. But you don't need to take home our napkin and fork. That's just wasteful, in my opinion. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves, and trying to figure out how to communicate that to people. So that will be part of our rewards program, to get people to not do that. They're the few people that carry their flatware in their car and their napkins in their car, and so they've already made that commitment and that switch. We love that when we get that. We have a few customers that are truly eco-conscious, and just really, they love the fact that we love that, so it's our special little connection with those people. It is the very small minority of people that do that, but we love hearing how customers reuse our packaging. So we have the cake in the plastic container with the snap-on lid. They're really expensive packaging choices, but we know that we don't print on them, they're not branded, they're easy to reuse, from Thanksgiving leftovers that I sent home with family, to collecting native seeds in them and letting those dry and labeling them and storing them, to craft supplies, to reusing them for all sorts of different things. So prior to COVID, we had a program where the customer brought their reusable containers back. We would slice their cake on the bar, put the cake in the container, and they got a discount at the register because we didn't have to pay for new packaging for them. Again, it was a very small percentage of customers who did that, but there were people, and we have customers who were concerned about how many of those containers are piling up in their kitchen right now, or for the ones that do save them and use them. I don't want to think about the people that just put them in the trash. That makes me cringe, but for the people that are saving them and reuse them, they would love to see us go back to a program where they could reuse those. So it's really hard for us right now because we're curbside. We're going to continue to do that, but we're going to try to bring that program back, and we would change out the container that we have the cake in to their container and send it back to them. It will slow our process. It will slow operations down a little bit. And I think our staff is concerned about the visual quality of the product. If we take a pre-sliced cake and put it in here, we may have to slice from the back. I'm not sure what we'll have to do. We're gonna play around with that and see. But my guess is that anybody who's committed enough to bringing those containers in for that and getting the discount for doing it, they're going to be okay with, number one, having to wait just a few minutes longer for us to do that when they get here. And if the cake is a little bit cramped or crumpled, where it transfers from one container to the other, it's the same cake. It's going to taste the same. I hope we're going to be okay with that. Beyond that, there was a program in Durham where, and I don't know how that's faring now post-COVID, but there were these containers that businesses would sign on to use. And if you got takeout, you got them in this container, and it was fold over, pretty heavy duty. We have some of those containers here, actually. And after you were finished with it, as a customer, I think you paid a certain fee per month to have use of the container, but you would drop it in this box, like a trash can, but not. And it was a collection box where those containers would then get taken somewhere and washed and redelivered back to the restaurants that were using them for them to go back in circulation. I'm hearing about a program similar to that in Canada right now for coffee cups. And they would like to see that come into the U.S. in some larger cities for testing as well. I do think that we need to find some solutions like that. We need to change the way we're doing things, or we need to go to a combination of reusable containers that people bring in, like their coffee mug. I think it's very simple for someone to bring a coffee mug and with their coffee in that, or compostable products and having industrial composting across the entire country. And there is a bill that's come to light. I think it was introduced last July, called the Compost Act, Compost Bill. Not sure which it is. It's got some support and would be $200 million a year, I think, over 10 years to further the compost industry across. So many different facets, whether it's the collection of it, whether it's a farm converting to that, whether it's a municipality that wants to grow that part of their services to the people that live there. It's really interesting and something that I think that we absolutely need to do.
What about the role of TerraCycle? Because you haven't mentioned that.
So when we look at the items that we frequently see in our waste stream, so we'll go through. We have this whole process that you'll get to see in the video, but we have some items that we regularly see in the trash can, and we're kind of looking for a way that we could minimize that. So we found out about this company called TerraCycle, and they sell boxes. They sell an all-in-one box, so you can put anything in it that you can't recycle locally and ship it back to you, and then they'll take care of it. That's their most expensive option because it's not sorted at all. Or if you feel like you have certain items in your waste stream that you see a lot of, then you can buy a box that's specifically sorted for that, and your price is lower on it because you're doing the sorting for them. So we have an office waste one, and in our office waste one, we can put anything from like a sticker, like the Avery labels that you peel off and use, whether it's a name tag or we use it for a complimentary cake or labeling different things for customers. So the back of the label is not recyclable, but it is in an office TerraCycle box. So we can put it in there. We can put a broken stapler. We can put ink pens that don't work anymore. Any kind of office item can go into the office. So that was an easy one. Plastic packaging was another one. From granola bar wrappers that staff eat at lunch or a snack or whatever, to the liner of, say, graham crackers that we use. There's a waxy kind of lining that can't go in the recycling here. Can't go in the plastic bag recycling, goes to Harris Teeter. It's got a coating on it. It's made of different plastics. It can go in the TerraCycle. We have a pet food one because most of us have pets here, and so I had seen one over at All Pets Considered here in town that they had one that one of the dog food companies was sponsoring. So we offered one here for any pet food packaging, treats, whatever. So our staff bring in their TerraCycle for that. We have coffee bags one. So since we sell coffee here, we have big 5-pound coffee bags, or we'll have smaller ones. Tea packaging. We don't have a lot of, actually we have 0 tea packaging waste the way we do tea here. But if anybody from home has something that they need to bring, they can bring it in as well. And then we have a beauty products one. So if it's a mascara empty container or toothpaste, tube, whatever, staff are welcome to bring in those items that cannot be recycled otherwise. So sometimes it's business waste, and sometimes it's waste just from our staff. But it's all education, and it's great to see that go back to TerraCycle. And now they're starting to sell a line of products of items that they are making from what they've recycled. So I haven't looked into that, but it's kind of neat to see that leg of it happen now.
And your shipping, you've done ways of making that more sustainable.
Right. So we added shipping to our services here as a result of an article that came out in Southern Living magazine a few years ago. So customers from across the country wanted to be able to get our cakes and have them shipped. So we had to come up with something. So what we very first came up with, it was on the fly, and we made do. But as we moved down the sustainability path, we really wanted to make sure that our shipping was as green as it could be as well. And so we buy our boxes from a company called Eco Enclose. They're made from recycled cardboard, granule soy inks, and we buy them in mass quantity, so we get a tractor trailer load of boxes when they come in. And then one of our staff here ordered special dog food that was like a fresh dog food, and so when it came in, it was in a cooler, but it wasn't a styrofoam cooler. It was a cooler insert that had been made by this company called Green Cell, and it's a compostable product. You tear the plastic off the outside of it, which can go in your plastic bag recycling that just goes to Harris Teeter or Target or wherever you take the plastic bags. And then the inside part you can either put in your compost or you can wash it down the sink, which was great. And then we use recycled paper for all of our printing, so any of the items that we have printed that go inside are printed on 100% recycled paper. And we use reusable ice packs so that the customer can refreeze and reuse in anything that they're using. So it felt really good to get that whole system down and to green that up a good bit.
And I guess the last question is, whether you're a big business or a small business here in the area, do you have any tip of getting on the journey of sustainability?
Well, I'm really happy to finally be telling this story. I think it's the kind of thing that you never feel like you quite have it all finished. It's always going to be a work in process. But you taking baby steps and doing one step at a time, and once you start doing that and you've got that underway, then you add another step on, you add another step on. So I hope to have a list of sources, companies that we use. I would definitely open myself up for contact with anybody that would like to come in and ask more questions, learn more, if I can be of any help. I think ultimately that would be wonderful if I could be a springboard for other companies